This time on SRC TV, we catch up with the competitors we haven't seen yet on the past 3 rounds, starting with the class battles on the RSAC Scottish Rally. Thomas Milne and Neil Jeffrey were running very strongly on their return to the SRC, second after SS2. They then made a rare navigational error and missed a regroup, which led to an unfortunate disqualification. Lachlan Hunter and Richard Simmons were challenging for class stage wins, despite flirting with a couple of bankings. Unfortunately, a hidden rock ended their day prematurely, but once again, they showed great pace.
Possibly catch that car in front, yeah.
Second in class went to Ryan Walker and Paul Gribben, Ryan not feeling as comfortable in the car as he would hope, finding it was moving about a bit more than he would like. Staying out of trouble, they were gradually increasing their pace, making some big steps up in the afternoon and shadowing the top crew's times on the last 2 stages. Another solid podium finish for Ryan in 2025. But leading from the start, Speyside MG3 winner Robbie Wood and co-driver Simon Mills had a very good first look, despite discovering they didn't have full throttle. Dalbeattie was tricky, stuck in second gear and dropping 20 seconds to their rivals. But when Hunter and Simmons retired, Robbie and Simon were left with a clear lead over Walker and Gribben. The silver car taking the class win by 46 seconds at the finish. Niall Cowan Jr and Gail White were back together in their MGZR, Niall on good gravel form after an MG3 challenge win at Greystoke. The morning was tricky, Niall feeling unhappy with how the car was driving, eventually traced to a throttle issue in service. Once that was sorted, they were much happier, blasting their way to a solid 27th overall and the C2 win. Alistair Brearley was reunited with Kenny Anderson for the Scottish. The first look wasn't great, Alistair unhappy with the car's setup. But after some suspension tweaks in service, things were much better handling wise, but they still managed to flirt with the undergrowth in the slippy conditions. Alistair drawing on all his experience to keep the car on the road to finish 38th overall. It was a tough event for Mike Grant and Graham Kelman, the Subaru crew running strongly for the first half of the day before being forced out when they ran out of spare tyres after multiple punctures in stage 5.
Scott Peacock, 19.
That's Mike Grant.
Mike Grant, yeah.
Elgin.
So Scott is...
Leading the two-wheel drive championship coming into this round, Andrew Forbes and Alex Hill were competing on their first Scottish rally. Things started well, the Civic crew shadowing the big escorts over the first 2 stages. But SS4 was where it went slightly wrong, sliding off the road for around 2 minutes. Very grateful to the spectators who pushed them back on, they still managed to salvage 26th overall at the finish. Craig Gibson and Ewan Lees survived an adventurous morning in the Mark 1, the Panhard rods disconnecting from the rear suspension on the first loop. That was sorted in service, but then they encountered brake issues. Unfortunately, that led to this late in the day.
8 left at the bottom. 80 here, then 8 left, easy. 8 left loose. Oh baby, come on. Oh my! Oh. I think that's us, mate.
Aye, that's us, pal. Oh, mate.
You're flying, mate.
Aye, good job, mate. See the f***ing brakes?
Scott Peacock was making his first SRC start in his newly purchased Mark II. With Greg Alcorn alongside, Scott was learning all the time, taking the opportunity to test out different tyres. It was a solid run, second in class, and a very respectable 16th overall at the finish.
This could be Scott.
Another crew enduring a difficult day, Martin Erskine and Peter Carstairs, had their own brake issues in the morning, the brake fluid boiling on the first loop. Then they had 2 punctures, one on the front and one on the rear. But despite all the issues, they survived to take 21st overall. Brake issues were the order of the day for Evos. Oren McDonnell and Claire Fraser experiencing the same problem as Erskine and Carstairs, actually stopping to bleed the brakes in SS1. With that solved, they then had the joy of being stuck in 3rd gear when the gear linkage came apart. To round it all off, there was a puncture on the way to 35th overall. Keith Robertson came into this round fresh from an excellent Argyll run, teaming up for the Scottish with Craig Nelson. The morning started well, although they did experience an overheating issue on the first run of Kinharvey. Putting it down to the big uphill section of that stage, Keith was happy that the car was running well on the other tests, 25th overall and 3rd SRC historic car home.
When that thing is on song.
The tough 2025 season continued for Ernie and Patricia Lee, the BMW's engine giving up the ghost in SS4. Second in class, Christina Robinson and Grum Wilcock came off second best in their private 208 battle with teammates Natalie Robinson and Sam Collis. They performed the almost traditional sacrifice of a front bumper early on, but ran well, battling for position with Niall Cowan Jr.'s MG. They ended the day in 28th, just 6 seconds down on the Grey ZR.
Doesn't appear to be a mark on the card, so doing very well.
The Grampian organisers had once again scheduled some Friday night stages, adding to the challenge for the crews. Ryan Walker had managed a trip to Wales for some pre-event tuition from Ocean Price, resulting in a tweaked setup on the MG3. What followed was a very consistent and steady run for Ryan and co-driver Paul Gribben, shadowing class leaders Robbie Wood and Simon Mills all event. Second in class and 51st overall was their reward. Cameron Murray and Lawrence Knight were out for the first time since the Speyside. Understandably very rusty, they were beginning to find their flow again, but were then forced out with a damaged radiator on Saturday morning. Max Carty and Daniel Bauer had worked hard on their C2 setup since the Speyside, moving up to 15-inch wheels. Friday night saw a front hub work loose, but the big drama was electrical failure at SS3. Max actually rebuilding the electrics at the side of the stage, and they soldiered on, making the finish in 65th overall, and earning the Club and Spirit Award in the process. Craig Wallace was marking a special birthday by making his stage rallying driving debut in a hired Mini. With Richard Crozier alongside, there were a couple of wild moments, but Craig was clearly loving life, getting faster with each stage. In fact, Craig was so happy, he'd invented his own game, trying to insert as many Led Zeppelin songs into his interviews as he could. But making it back-to-back class wins, Niall Cowan Jr. and Gail White did not enjoy the Friday night. A spin, puncture and a near miss at Aileen Forest's infamous bridge did no good for Niall's mood. But Saturday was better, getting closer to their normal pace as the day wore on, grabbing 46th overall by the end of the event. It was a short event for Alistair Brearley and Chris Wareham, this happening on the live stream of SS1.
He's going very well. Team Moto.
Thankfully, no one was hurt. John Brownie and Gordon Ritchie were another crew to make a steady start on the Friday in the Opel Cadet, lying 73rd overnight. Saturday saw them step their pace up, really enjoying the tricky and dusty nature of their home forests. Towards the end of the event, a seal opened up in the cockpit, showering them in a nice layer of dust, but they grabbed yet another finish in 61st overall. Cameron Black had teamed up with his brother Connor for this round. Regular nav Duncan Don was away seeing Oasis. They started well on the Friday, but Saturday was a different matter. First, they broke the rear diff mount, cannibalising the service van to carry on. Then there was a puncture on a road section before this happened in SS8.
Right 7 in, right 7 in. Oh no. You're alright. Go up there and turn. That's it, you get around there.
A snapped rear trailing arm was the culprit, and sadly they ran out of time trying to effect a repair. The Phillip brothers were back for the first time since the Speyside. The venerable Impreza continuing to run like clockwork as always, and despite feeling a bit rusty early on, Neil and Ian enjoyed their run round to 63rd overall and yet another rally finish. Mike Grant and Graham Kelman had learned lessons from the Scottish, carrying 2 spares this time out. They didn't enjoy Friday, finding the stage surfaces to be tricky. Saturday was better, although they had an argument with a bale on the spectator stage. 52nd overall and second in class was a vast improvement over their Scottish result. It wasn't a great event for Alan Scott and Shayna Archibald. Friday night they suffered an overshoot and a loose sump guard, but the big issue was a splittering engine. Sadly it wouldn't last, giving up the ghost midway through Saturday. It was also a tough weekend for Fletcher Faulkner and Ian Murray. Friday was clean, Fletcher continuing to learn about the gravel. Unfortunately, they would retire with an off on the first Saturday stage. Andrew Forbes and Alex Hill started strongly in their Civic, third two-wheel drive after SS1. But then things began to go wrong, the power steering cutting in and out intermittently for the rest of the event, despite the team's best efforts to sort it in service. With Andrew's arms hanging off, they soldiered on, grabbing the M3 win and 40th overall at the end of a very tough day. With the Mark I sorted after the Scottish, the Grampian started badly for Craig Gibson and Ewan Lees when the service van's radiator failed on the way to the event. Onto the stages, and they quickly dented the exhaust and survived an early puncture. The rear brake issue returned late on, and they did another panhard rod, but survived this time to take third in class. Enjoying an easier time, Michael Phillip and Laura Dawson were making their usual sideways progress in the Blue Mark II. They enjoyed an entertaining battle with Andrew Forbes and Alex Hill's malfunctioning Civic, swapping times for most of the event, ending up just 20 seconds clear of the Honda by the end of the rally. John Shepherd had found a seat alongside Ben Stockdale in the Mark II for this round. Things were going well early on, but unfortunately they went off the road for good in SS6. There was a similar fate for Gordon Morrison and Charlotte McDowell. It was a bit more cruel for them, however, putting the Escort off on the very last stage of the event. Simon Hay and Callum Jaffrey were hoping for a clean run on their home event. The Evo was running strongly, but was sadly forced out with a broken gearbox when leaving service. It was even more sad, Simon and Callum announcing that they would be stepping away from rallying, but hopefully they don't stay away too long. Mike Moats and Gary McDonald were using this event to test out their new helmets and intercom combo before they tackled the Roger Albert Clark rally. The new units were working really well, and they were finally feeling they were getting a handle on their relatively new Impreza. Smiling all the way as usual, they grabbed 3rd in class and 49th overall. Aileen Forrest was teaming up with Susan Shanks for the Grampian. They took it steady on the Friday night, but were happy to get round with no disasters. Saturday started well, but they quickly discovered a problem with the starter motor. Not ideal when Aileen stalled it on the start line of SS5. There were a few wild moments towards the end of the day as Aileen tried to avoid another stall, but they survived to grab a decent 58th overall. Keith Robertson and Stephen Brown made a solid start on the Friday, the only real issue being an oil pressure sensor failing. The Saturday was more tricky, a mysterious electrical issue slowly working its way through the car, killing the starter motor, followed by all the dashboard instruments. Keeping the car running was the only solution, and they nursed the car to 4th SRC Historic Home, 3rd Haddo Energy Super Senior, and 44th overall. Donald Brooker and Tony Booth were back in their new BMW for this round. The best way to test a car is in competition, and they were learning even more than they had at the Speyside about their new mount with every passing stage. Donald having another list of things he wanted to adjust by the end, the BMW finishing 59th overall. Having just contested the Mach 1 stages in their Citroen C3, John Rintoul and Ross Hind were finding the woods in a Mark II to be a bit of a shock to the system. They spent the event getting back into the swing of rear-wheel drive, closer and closer to the pace with every stage. 42nd overall at the finish was their reward. And Chris Williams had booked one of the best seats in the house for the Grampian, alongside Jack Mathewson in the glorious sounding Mark II. Friday night they hit something solid, the team performing some hammer-based surgery overnight. They were back on it on the Saturday, powering their way to 32nd overall and 2nd historic spec car home. Mark Irvin was back behind the wheel of his Rally 4 Fiesta, joined by Ross Mackay in the hot seat. Friday was eventful, a puncture in stage 1 and a half spin in 2. Saturday, however, was even more eventful.
On flat left. We're good.
But they didn't let that defeat them, copious amounts of duct tape being deployed, and they still managed 53rd overall at the finish. With the BMW still poorly, Ernie and Patricia Lee had made the admirably brave decision to hire a Rally 2 Fiesta. Ernie's testing for left-hand drive consisted of driving the combine on the farm. Excellent practice because the steering wheel is, of course, in the middle. Sadly, the rally was short-lived. After broken front suspension on Friday night, a log pulled out by someone else to blame. The Buckley team sorted the car overnight and they got back out in the Super Rally on the Saturday, both crew members thoroughly enjoying their Rally 2 experience. A new start and finish venue greeted the crews for the Armstrong at Galloway Hills, now based out of Dunmellington. It was a tough return for Thomas Milne and Simon Mills, 2nd in class after stage 1. A popped tyre pulled the fuel pump relay off in SS3 and they were OTL. Easily sorted in service, they joined the practice rally and set some decent times for the rest of the day. Another MG3 with a tale of woe, Lachlan Hunter and Richard Simmons managed a solid run to stage 1 before a broken drive shaft in the following road section would force them out. Lachlan, another driver, in with a shout for the unluckiest driver award. But it was tight for the Class 1. Ryan Walker and Paul Gribben were challenging for the top spot for most of the day until a puncture, a cracked windscreen, and Ryan being hit in the face with glass when he clipped his wing mirror on a tree branch. Despite it all, they were only 29 seconds away from the Class 1 at the finish. But taking both the class and the win in the MG3 Challenge, Robbie Wood and Stephen Brown enjoyed another day-long battle with Walker and Gribben. It wasn't a straightforward day for them either, surviving a puncture and a false red flag warning on their tracker. Pushing all the way to the finish, they were very happy to come out top at the end of the day. It was not a great run for Niall Cowan Jr. and Gail White this time out, the ZR's engine giving up the ghost in SS3.
That's really committed.
On their first experience of the Galloway Hills, Andrew Forbes and Alex Hill were really enjoying themselves, finding the high-revving Civic well suited to these roads. Their only real issue was getting the power down in the slippy conditions. Continuing to get quicker and quicker on the gravel, they managed an excellent 20th overall and third SRC two-wheel drive car home, only beaten by two of the fittest escorts in the country. Craig Gibson and Ewan Lees enjoyed another entertaining day in the Mark 1, spinning in stage 1 and catching and passing another competitor in 3. A Shield alternator bolt was sorted in service and they caught and passed another car in stage 5.
Nice and easy going by him. And 2 right at the end here, right? Keep your concentration. 2 right and 2 right again, then 1 left. We're close to the end.
The Mark 1 was just 39 seconds down on another entertainer, Michael Phillip and Laura Dawson. The blue car also on a hot pace all day, setting a couple of top 20 times on the way to a season's best 21st overall and 4th SRC two-wheel drive car home. Also running very well, Scott Peacock was reunited with Craig Wallace for this round. Having learned a lot at the Scottish, Scott was on it even more here, shadowing the rapid Paddy Munro and Andrew Stevenson all day. Second SRC two-wheel drive and 18th overall was a really strong showing as Scott continues to learn the two-wheel drive game. Having tested the new helmets and intercom at the Grampian, Mike Moats and Gary McDonald were using the hills to test out a new notes system before the RAC. Under strict orders to not bend the car with the upcoming McRae Rally Challenge at Knockhill, they were on a steady pace all day, finishing 4th in class and 40th overall. After their difficult Argyll, George and Jacqueline Bryson were hoping for a smoother day as they shook down their Mark 1 Escort before the RAC. That didn't really happen in the morning. Severe power issues eventually traced to a dodgy earth wire on the alternator. Things then got better, getting quicker as the day wore on and salvaging 44th overall at the finish. Christina Robinson and Grum Wilcock had found a different MG to battle with once Cowan Jr. and White retired, the 208 ending the day tied on time with Ryan Walker and Paul Gribben, just losing out on 30th overall on the tie break. Christina's consistent season continuing with another second in class. Having not been in the car since the Scottish, Stuart and Mark Irvin were understandably feeling a bit rusty. Steamed up windows in the morning didn't help, especially at 110 miles per hour. Then the tracker played up in stage 2 to add to their fun. The drier afternoon was also a challenge, worn tyres not helping with grip, but once the 2 spares were swapped on, things improved, the i20 grabbing 22nd overall at the finish.